Spider-Man Far From Home is tearing its way around the world after having just released worldwide, so in anticipation for it, I decided to go back and watch the Marvel movies in chronological order from beginning to end to rank them from worst to best. This is the 6th time that I've done this, and I love revisiting the films with the added context of the sequels and Easter eggs. Throughout this video I'll be going through each film one by one to let you know how it compares to the rest and what I think of it. This list covers all 23 films including Far From Home, so it should give you an overall idea of how good or bad it is. With that out of the way, I'm your host Definition. I just want to give a huge thank you for clicking this video. I hope you enjoy it. Now let's dive into my list of the 23 MCU movies ranked from worst to best. Thor. Thor comes last on our list for a number of reasons. Firstly, the film feels slightly by the numbers with a portrayal of Thor that is difficult to connect with. The dialogue feels overly Shakespearean, which, if you know of Kenneth Branagh who directed the film, is expected. It just doesn't feel fitting for the MCU. The piece is cliched, and due to its pacing it feels slightly disjointed, and its third act is just very underdeveloped. If one were to judge Thor purely off this film alone, and know for a fact that many would not hold the character as the fan favourite that he now is. Overall, it feels underwhelming, and that's why it holds last place. The Incredible Hulk. When going through a watch of the MCU, The Incredible Hulk definitely feels like the most unnecessary out of the films. The origin story is skipped over, mainly due to the Hulk film that covered it a couple of years prior, and bar General Ross, nothing from this movie really gets touched upon in the later films. The action, CGI and plot elements all feel slightly dated by today's standards, and this movie hasn't held up in the way that, say, Iron Man did. Overall, it's totally fine, however, due to the quality of the other films on the list, it's hard to rank it any higher. Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel sees the first female-led film in the Marvel Universe and showcases the origin story for Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel. Unfortunately for me, the film feels a bit flat and lacks the wit and ingenuity of the other Marvel movies. Whilst the Skrulls twist was surprising and Samuel L. Jackson steals the show, Brie Larson just doesn't capture my interest due to her lack of charisma and aloofness, and that's why it ranks so low on our list. Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 had some pretty big shoes, or should I say suits to fill, and not to give anything away, but its predecessor is one of my favourite comic book films ever made, and this one falls flat in almost every department when compared to it. The arc for Tony isn't as strong, the villains are both underdeveloped and don't really put up much of a challenge, and whilst there is a nice metaphor for the gun control debate, with the government trying to strip Tony of his right to bear arms, it feels slightly meandering. Even the normally outstanding Scarlett Johansson feels pedestrian here, and overall it's just a bit underwhelming. Thor: The Dark World. Thor: The Dark World is a real guilty pleasure of mine, and whilst it's hated by many, I absolutely love the film. It's got fast-paced action, some great twists, and it also makes Thor far more likeable than he was in the first film. Whilst the villain is very underdeveloped, this is Loki's moment to shine, and he secures himself as a fan favourite based off this movie alone. Captain America: The First Avenger. Whilst Captain America: The First Avenger is often overlooked, I actually really enjoy the film due to its heart, message and period setting. The movie beautifully portrays what it takes to be a hero, and it excellently interweaves the propaganda aspect of the character that was prevalent throughout the Second World War. Add to that the ever so catchy Star Spangled Man, and you have a hit on your hands that's my second favourite origin story from Phase 1. Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3 is another guilty pleasure of mine, and luckily or unluckily depending on how you look at it, I had the big twist from this film spoiled for me months before I actually saw the film, so I didn't find it that jarring. I can see the bad in it, but due to the performances of Downey and Don Cheadle, I really have a great time whilst watching it. The Air Force One rescue scene is incredible and one of the best action pieces in the Marvel movie franchise, and I completely fanboy out over the final battle with all of the versions of the suits. This film really secures Iron Man as the coolest character for me, and whilst the script may not be the best, there is definitely a lot of fun to be had here. Oh yeah, and it's a Christmas movie. Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man and the Wasp may not live up to the first film in my eyes, but it's still a lot of fun, and upon its release it felt like the perfect palate cleanser for the events of Infinity War. This really takes the character in a new direction, and the house arrest motif that constantly sees Scott battling between helping his friends or seeing his daughter is an inspired choice. The film uses San Francisco to full effect and also has one of the coolest looking villain costumes ever put to film with the design of the Ghost. This doesn't really possess the stakes of the other movies, but it's still an enjoyable ride that showcases the dexterity of the MCU. Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange brings magic to the MCU with a spellbinding tale about the titular character's journey of enlightenment. Whilst the initial hour of the film is slightly derivative of Batman Begins, it takes a complete 180 and ventures into untread territory that's laden with outstanding effects and a unique final showdown. Overall, Doctor Strange is a fun ride, but I find it slightly too formulaic to scratch the upper echelon of the MCU, and that's why it gets a position here. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Depending on what day it is, Guardians 2 jumps back and forth with the first film as my favourite out of the two. Once again though, during this watch through I actually preferred the first film over it. That's not to say it's bad though, and this is an incredible second outing for the characters. Nebula becomes a massively likeable anti-hero, and this father and son story really delivers on a lot of levels. I mean, what's not to love about an adventure with Baby Groot? Exactly. Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy is by far one of the funniest films in the franchise. It took the cast of characters from the Z-list and was a huge risk for Marvel that paid off massively. Not only does it set up the space side of the saga, it also builds upon several elements of the MCU, such as an appearance by Thanos, Ronan the Accuser, the Collector and the Infinity Stones. Guardians is a movie with a lot of heart and it's one of my favourites. Avengers Age of Ultron. Avengers Age of Ultron gets a pretty bad rap in my opinion. The film is one of the most developed villains out of the saga, and this movie beautifully puts cracks in the relationship of the team that would come to fruition in Civil War. The Hulkbuster fight is outstanding and one of the best action scenes in the series, and whilst it doesn't match up to the first Avengers film, it isn't really trying to, and that's what a lot of people get confused. I really enjoy it even to this day, and that's why it ranks higher than most. Ant-Man. Ant-Man took an absurd hero and showed that Marvel had the ability to make even the most obscure name a mainstream hit. The film is full of fun from beginning to end, and it tells the story of a father on the wrong side of the law trying to do good by his daughter. Add to that the comedic delivery of Paul Rudd and outstanding special effects, and you have a small hero that makes a big impact on the list. Black Panther. Black Panther was groundbreaking in many ways, as not only did it completely reinvent the Africa aesthetic, it also did it in a way that made it seem mystical and futuristic. This was the first time that we really saw a Marvel hero lose, and the arc of Killmonger is as fascinating as the movie's protagonist. It's no wonder that this film got nominated for Best Picture when it does so many things bang on. Spider-Man Homecoming. Spider-Man Homecoming not only works as a fantastic coming-of-age story, but it's also the most accurate take on the webhead to ever be released. This is a fun-filled ride from start to finish that features knockout performances by Michael Keaton as the Vulture and Tom Holland as Peter Parker. Add to that the mentoring that Tony Stark provides, and you really get a fleshed out film that makes your friendly neighbourhood Spider-Man slot perfectly into the MCU. Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Captain America: The Winter Soldier was when the MCU got serious. This political espionage thriller is far advanced beyond its years, and it really feels like a grounded and gritty take on the characters that are in it. The movie expertly tackles privacy, terrorism, and the government in an adult manner that's still very fun to watch. This movie too has a heart, and that's why it still stands as one of the best films in the franchise. Spider-Man: Far From Home. Spider-Man: Far From Home feels like one of the most important entries in the run, with the titular hero pretty much becoming the new face of the universe as he slowly learns what it's like to become a hero. As always, power and responsibility are big aesthetics here, and the movie solidifies Tom Holland as film's best Spider-Man. Add to that some neat little twists and turns, awesome action scenes, and an adventure that takes the character around the world, and you have a unique film that manages to better its predecessor. Far From Home is another solid entry and definitely deserves its spot in the top 10. Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok totally reinvents the titular character and puts him in a hilarious film that's far removed from the original movie. At this point, Thor had become a fan favourite, and this film cements him as one of the best Avengers. All of the supporting cast really bring their A game, and the movie introduces Korg to the world, who is probably the funniest MCU character ever created. Add to that the inspiration from Planet Hulk, the destruction of Asgard, and an amazing performance by Jeff Goldblum, and you have one of the best MCU movies ever made. Iron Man. Iron Man kicked off the MCU in spectacular fashion. This film had to be a success for Marvel in order to kickstart their grand vision, and there was a lot riding on its shoulders. However, due to perfect casting, outstanding CGI, expert pacing, and a relatable hero that turned a scoundrel into a role model, the movie succeeded in several ways. It's one of my favourite origin stories of all time and ranks up there with Batman Begins, and it's just brilliant from start to finish. The piece works as an outstanding 9/11 and Iraq War metaphor, with an arms dealer having to handle the repercussions of arming the Middle East terrorists to the point that they were able to fight back. Even today, it stands as an amazing piece of cinema, and that's why it easily secures a spot in the top 5. The Avengers. The Avengers changed the landscape of film and heralded in a new generation of shared universes that all failed to live up to this first instance in the industry. From beginning to end, the movie encapsulates the comics and feels like an outstanding vision brought to life on the big screen. Overnight, this turned its heroes from B and C-listers to the most profitable comic book characters on Earth. Whether it's the incredibly witty dialogue provided by Joss Whedon or the phenomenal action in the city of New York, everything feels like it's innovating while setting the bar high enough that many would fail to live up to it. Every hero is fully fleshed out and developed, and this is the perfect team of film from beginning to end that, on any given day, depending on what mood you're in, could be considered the best in the franchise. Captain America: Civil War. Versus movies are 10 a penny and they're often pretty lackluster. Civil War, however, is a shining example of how to do it right. In the same year that saw the release of Batman v Superman, Civil War managed to perfectly capture what a rivalry of this scale should be like, whilst adding a heart to it that its competitor sorely missed. This movie is epic from start to finish and contains many devastating moments such as the death of Peggy Carter, the reveal that the Winter Soldier murdered the Starks, and the collapse of the Avengers. Add to that the introduction of Spiderman, Black Panther, and the seminal airport sequence, and you have one of the best superhero movies of all time. Phenomenal from start to finish, Civil War deserves its spot in the top 3 films. Avengers: Infinity War. In my head before seeing Infinity War, I thought there was no way that this could live up to the hype. Thanos had been teased for 10 years, as had the Infinity Stones, and with almost every character from the franchise in the film, it just seemed impossible for the Russo brothers to pull it off. However, against all odds, they managed to. Infinity War is a complete masterpiece that possesses perfect pacing, outstanding action scenes, but also an unforgettable ending that will arguably stand as one of the greatest twists ever put to film for a long time. Infinity War not only nails everything that it attempts to do, but it also surpasses all expectations and creates an outstanding movie from beginning to end that showcases why the MCU is the most popular film franchise of all time. This is a complete masterpiece and deserves its position here on the list. Avengers: Endgame. Avengers: Endgame rightfully deserves its spot at number 1 on this list, as it's an absolutely incredible film from start to finish. The movie has some outstanding action from beginning to end, but it also packs emotional moments that will have you laughing with joy in some parts and crying in others. This is the perfect send-off for every character in the entire MCU, and honestly, if this was the final film in the franchise, it would feel like one of the best send-offs of all time. This movie is not only the best on the list, but it's also the best comic book movie ever made, and that's why it secures its spot at number 1. And that's our list. Obviously, I'd love to hear yours and where you rank Spider-Man: Far From Home. Comment below and let me know, and if you enjoyed it then please like it and make sure you stay locked to the channel for our ending explained breakdown on the movie later in the day. We've also just covered the new footage of Avengers: Endgame, so if you want to know what happens in the re-release, then make sure you head over to that video, which will be linked at the end. This is a channel for people who are super into superheroes, so if that's the kind of thing you like, hit subscribe. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this. I've been Definition, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.